Sir, switching gears to the Fort Hood shootings, I was wondering at what point do you think it would be appropriate for your committee to start having open hearings on this, and what your initial reaction is as to what went wrong?
Well, of course, we're in the middle of briefings now, and we will, as soon as we have a few more briefings, make a decision as to when our first hearing is. I announced that we will be having hearings. I've already announced that, and we are undertaking an investigation focusing on the military piece of this. Other committees will be focusing more probably on the FBI part of it, the Joint Terrorism Task Force pieces of it. But I just can't tell you exactly when the hearings will begin, other than that there will be hearings and that they'll begin after we've had some additional briefings, which will then put us in a position to have public hearings so that we hold them in a way which is useful and for the public. But also, we've got to do all of that being careful not to in any way undermine the criminal investigation and prosecution, which is so essential here.
And Senator Lieberman yesterday had his first public hearing, and he qualified the shootings as a terrorist attack. I was wondering whether you'd be comfortable to name that a terrorist attack or not.
Well, it sure looks like that. There may not have been any others that worked with them, but it probably can be labeled a terrorist attack. I'm not uncomfortable with thinking that that's the likely outcome here, or the likely accurate description.
Using that test that you just had, it sure looks like, doesn't it sure look like something went wrong with the military personnel system, that they didn't identify this man as a potential risk?
I think there's some real questions that need to be asked about it, but you have to start before you get into that system and look at what we did have, which was at the Joint Terrorism Task Forces in 2 cities, which were presented apparently with emails which would seem to raise some real flags and require some further inquiry. After the decision was made by that FBI-led JTTF not to pursue those any further, at that point there was no easy way to connect back to that whatever happened inside of the military. Now, he gave a lecture with slides which apparently did not raise any questions. When you look at the slides in hindsight, you wonder, shouldn't questions have been raised about some of the things that he told his colleagues? But he was describing there what the risks were in terms of Muslim soldiers who were under the kind of pressures that some people were being put under in terms of doctrine which said you don't kill or wound other Muslims. He laid that out and wanted to know, well, he wanted to raise the question of, does this raise such risks that there ought to be some conscientious objector status which is offered to these soldiers. Now, that is something which could raise a question about him as to whether psychologically he was talking about himself, but it also raises some very legitimate questions about whether or not we should not be more careful to have in our military people who have a conscientious religious objection to going to war against any particular group, whatever that group may be. Those are legitimate questions. So, but before you get to the military, which is what we're going to focus on, you have to wonder about the FBI-led Joint Terrorism Task Force not pursuing the leads that they had, apparently through emails between him and a radical cleric in Yemen.
Just some of the reports about concerns other officers had about him raise questions in your mind too, whether the military is properly evaluating people or whether there's some censor that's going on so that they're not giving a honest evaluation of what they think of their fellow officers?
There are questions that are that need to be addressed both inside the military, and that investigation is going on right now, and by us in terms of our oversight responsibilities. So the answer to your question is yeah.
And are you satisfied with what the Secretary Gates has announced, that their internal investigation? Are you satisfied that they're looking at everything that needs to be looked at this point?
Well, from what I've seen, yes. I mean, I haven't. You know, I heard what Secretary Gates said. It sounds like it's a thorough, prompt investigation. The President wants a report on intelligence by the end of November, and that's prompt and proper. So I would think yes, but that does not eliminate the need for congressional oversight. We have a responsibility here, not just to make sure that the FBI has a proper investigation, and that the intelligence service here, our intelligence services here, including Homeland Security, properly investigate what happened and what didn't happen that perhaps should have happened. But Congress has a responsibility also to oversee the military actions and lack of actions under these circumstances.
One of the secondary themes that came out of the Fort Hood story was concern about the level of stress on the military and their families. I'm wondering, as we go into this new increase for Afghanistan, what your questions are to the military, or what congressional policy making might be with regard to refreshment of the troops and their R&R.
Well, we have that ongoing responsibility. As you point out, it's a important one, a heavy one, and we think we're asking the right questions, because the American people are determined to give our troops the support that they need while they're in harm's way, and after they come out of harm's way, when they have to bear the brunt of the impacts of having put their lives at risk and the stresses that they were under. So we are telling, and the military knows this because this has been the case for many, many years, the American people really want us to support our troops and our veterans, regardless of what position they take on the two wars that are the recent ones, Iraq and Afghanistan. Regardless of what position one takes on that, the American people really want that kind of support to be full, and it is, and the military and the Pentagon know that we will provide everything, and we constantly prod them. What can we do with the suicide rate? What can we do with the lack of, we call dwell time, the time periods between deployments? How can we reduce the stress on our troops and our families? That is a constant question, and we do everything we possibly can to support our military and our veterans.